I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Hot goddamn, it's working.
Yay! Yeah, this is already smoother than usual. Hooray!
Where are you coming from? You have such a cool background. Are you at a store? Sorry.
This is my house. This is
I
where.
love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, when we talked to Kelly Sue a couple months ago, I think she was in like a bedroom and there was lots of cute doggos running back and forth.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, so this is a different view, but yeah, I'm trying really hard not to try to read all the spines of the books. Well, welcome.
It's my smoke bomb. It's like neural chaff, so I can duck and dive and avoid straightforward answers if I have to. I slowly roll out of frame and.
Oh yeah, now I can get distracted by the mask. Is that the creature from the Black Lagoon? That's so good.
It is.
And all the Godzillas. Oh no. Okay.
All right, so screw this talk. Let's just talk about this. Yeah.
Just pick random things off your
So
bookcase.
our first question is, can you give us a home library?
Sure.
Well, I have to like recalibrate. I'm so distracted. I know, it's great. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us and for pivoting. I know you had some fun surprise travel last week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I had to go to London, England, so I would have been garbage if we did this. So I appreciate your patience and flexibility with me.
Yeah, thank you for making time to join us. We really appreciate your time. And we often read brand new graphic novels, and so I think it's more fresh on creators' minds. But for September this year, the sort of request was that we do a Sextember theme. So we went with sex criminals, because how could we not? So we also appreciate you meeting with us and doing a deep dive into things you might not have thought about for the last decade or so.
I'm thrilled to be a part of Stroketober.
Striptober, yeah, why not?
So if you missed Sextember, it's fine. October? Sorry, I'm working a little blue. I figure though, if everybody's talking about this book, then it's okay.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Matt, would you mind starting by just sharing a little bit more about yourself and sort of your journey into comics?
Gosh, sure. Do you mean professionally, or how do you give me a little more context for that?
Yeah, so I think however you want to. So whether that's when you started enjoying the medium or how you entered it professionally.
I mean, I guess ultimately it's all kind of the same story. I don't ever remember not reading comics. They were always around. They were always. I was a artistic kid and drew compulsively, and so I was kind of fed comics. The first comic I remember being given was a Batman 316, which feels like a thing you would hold up on a sign at a wrestling match. And always read them and made my own. I don't know if you remember like dot matrix printer paper. You'd have the kind of two perforated edges with holes so the printer sprocket could move the paper. My mom would bring me home printouts from her work or whatever, or my dad, and I'd tear off one edge of the holes and separate all the pages and then use yarn and weave them through the sprocket holes on the other side, so they'd be like a sewn book, and it would make like comics and give to my friends or whatever. I went to art school and made comics there. I went to film school and made comics there. I went to an animation school and made comics there, and then dropped out of school for the last time and started a company with some friends. We did motion graphics and design and animation for film and TV, and that was pretty great, and it was going right along. And sort of as the internet was becoming more prominent and prevalent and a thing that was kind of everywhere, I would hang out in like comic spaces, and that tended to mean hanging out with people who worked in the business. And since I kind of came from an art school model, it's very show and tell. You make work and you show it to people, and they show you their work and all that stuff. So I would sort of share the work we were doing with people who were in comics, and and I started to write about comics online very, very early. And then people started to ask if I would write, like I would get offers to do things. And then people wanted to start to actually pay money to publish them. And I liked it. It was like a night job. I liked it because they were all independent and it was nice to not have a client, the work we did was great, and it was exciting, and it was fun, and it took me around the world, and we did all kinds of cool stuff, but there was always ultimately a client involved. So it was nice to just get to have a thing that I could go do that wasn't, pixel fucking all day long, and just let me write and do something creative. And I kind of then left advertising ultimately because it was advertising, and put all my chips on making it in the lucrative field of comic book writing. And at that point, I had just a few things published here and there, but publishers who pay people to write were always looking for new voices, and I got a gig at Marvel, and that turned into a half gig. So I got a Punisher job at Marvel, and then very quickly thereafter, Ed Brubaker wanted to launch Iron Fist, and at that point, he had just killed Captain America, and it was the biggest thing in the world. And Mark Miller was sick, and so Civil War wasn't happening, and Marvel had to basically make up an entire quarter of publishing because they didn't want to give Civil War to anybody else to do. And Ed had killed Captain America, and it turned out to be this huge thing. And Ed was like, and now I'm going to write Iron Fist. And Marvel was like, no, that's probably not a great idea, but bring in a co-writer. So Ed and I started to do Iron Fist, and with a book and a half, I kind of parlayed that into a career. But I'd never stopped making my own stuff. I'd never stopped writing my own kind of independent work. Whether or not it was published with any regularity is an entirely different question, because it takes much longer to draw these things than it does to write them, and people need to make livings. And things at Marvel worked out all right, and I had a moment where I realized I was kind of being shown the door at Marvel, which happens, it's all fashion, right? It's all people come, people go, right? And it sort of sometimes doesn't matter about the work itself, but like it's the personalities or whatever it was. But I was kind of like, oh, I'm being shown the door. And from the outside of a bar where the entire editorial and creative staff of this one particular editorial retreat were having dinner and drinks, I had called Eric Stevenson at Image and pitched him basically every series idea that I had that I hadn't had time to launch because I was kind of doing Marvel books all the time, or, and like I said, it's hard to find someone who will do comics for free, right? And Eric was into all of them, and one of them was Sex Criminals. And I had known Chip from online and became familiar with his work online and loved it and loved him. And we had wanted to work together in comics, and we had done a couple of things together. Like we made a music video together for a band called Effed Up. And we just kind of would bounce things back and forth. And this was one of the things that I bounced at him. And it was like right away. I usually remember when and where, and not just an idea, but like, because like it's not one idea, right? It's a bunch of ideas. And it's like having it's like having all the food in your cupboards out on your counter, and you got to figure out which one makes a meal, right? Or we don't need eggs and sugar. So let's just go with eggs. All right, all right, whatever it is, right? So it's sort of, and usually I remember the moment when I look at the counter or whatever and see, oh, I know what I'm going to make. I don't with Sex Criminals. We actually put the email that I sent Chip on the cover of the last of the variant reprints of the first issue that we did, which is me emailing Chip at like 6 a.m. saying, hey, what if we do a comic about a guy who, whenever he comes, he stops time? And Chip wrote back like, sounds great. And we were off to there. That was it. So that wasn't so bad. That was like 4 minutes. That was okay.
That's awesome. So my next question was about sort of the formation of the idea, but which you already shared a little bit about. But was Eric was he all in when you pitched this idea? There wasn't any trepidation. He was like,
No,
hell yeah,
no.
let's do it.
And to, you know, Image is not a publishing house without its flaws and faults, but I would never say editorial cowardice is one of them. Eric was all in it, and it was the only place that would have published it as is. You know, I mean, Eric put me on stage at the Moscone Center in San Francisco with the first two covers. That second cover up on a giant screen in an auditorium full of 1,000 people. And said, "What's that?" It's like, "Oh, it's a guy standing in an ocean of sublimated cum." It's great. So yeah, no, Eric was just kind of all in right away, which again, I will be eternally grateful to him for that. And it was a thing I could never really talk about. I knew what it was and I knew what it felt like, but I didn't really know how to describe it. I didn't know how to pitch it. I remember telling my wife and Brian Bendis and Brian's wife about it, and them shooting each other looks like, "Oh, he's got some stuff he needs to get out of his system." Like it was some kind of like, "Oh, he's been at Marvel a long time, and he's clearly venting some things," And my wife just looking at me like I was nuts, which I suppose I am, and I did probably a terrible job of explaining the book. But I don't know, if you're explaining a book to somebody, I don't know that you can talk about the effect you're hoping it evinces from someone, right? Like, "Oh yeah, but it's going to be bittersweet and it'll make you cry." Like, you can't, like, that's not a thing you write, right? That's not up to you. But yeah, so it was a thing that, and look, I was under no illusions. I assumed it was going to last. I assumed it would last 3 issues, maybe 4. We would pay entirely to publish a 5th and beg Eric to make a collection that would be printed like 500 copies, and it would be immediately forgotten about. And Chip and I would always have this thing that, like, "Look, we made a funny book. Isn't that great? Look at this crazy thing we made." But it became clear, like, we knew it was a hit the day of publication, and the day of the second issue's publication, Apple banned it from sale on iTunes and Comixology. And as part of the deals publishers have with digital distributors, or at least back then, I guess it's been like 10 years. So yeah, back then, they didn't have to tell you why. They just said, "Nope, we're not selling this." And Eric had spent a day trying to get information out of him and like what's going on. And at the time, it was interesting, but both Kelly Sue and I had a abnormal, like, we broke the bell curve on digital sales, both at Marvel and Image. Like, we had an abnormal amount of digital sales. We were very strong at digital sales, I think, because that was a moment where the direct market was transitioning into something that it looks like now. But at the time, it tended to be more Android's dungeons. Places like yours were the exception rather than, if not the rule, then unsurprising, right? Although I'm always surprised when I see a cooling, like a counter full of refrigerated goods is always a little like that's next level. I love it. But anyway, so it was right about Halloween. It was right about this time of year. And back in the day, there used to be this thing called Twitter, and people from all around the world would just say funny things on it all day long, and it was great. And at Halloween, people would change their names to kind of funny, like the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, like headstones, right? Everybody would do funny things. And I was kind of stuck that year, like, oh, I got to do, and Halloween costumes are like sexy and scary. I got nothing. So I just changed my username to Butt Stuff Werewolf. Okay. So my username is buttstuffwerewolf, and I'm like I just am full of garbage. I was never a tweeter of. I just liked to be able to make dumb jokes and shoot him into the sun. But I mean, so in a Marvel retreat, it's like it'd be a Wednesday, so it was like day one of a Marvel retreat, and I'm getting like texts and emails that I can't really address because of another thing, and we're like, it's being banned, people are freaking out, nobody knows what's going on, and Eric is just like, all right, man, let slip the dogs of war, like, and so I tweeted about it, and it exploded. It was picked up by like CNN and Time and Wired and CNET, and because all of the official information was coming out from my Twitter, they would copy the API code and embed it in the story. So I was in Time and CNN and Wired and CNET as Buttstuff Werewolf, which I really recommend if you ever have the opportunity. It's great stuff. And at that point, it was so big, it became clear that like, oh, we're going to be able to do this as long as we want. And like we had like caught lightning in a bottle, right? It's just this kind of completely unpredictable thing. And then like Time named it the comic of the year, which was how my parents found out about it. One of my mother's coworkers came into her office and said, he must be so proud of Matthew. She goes, yeah, why? And that my mom called me and like, what is this? Why am I reading about this in Time magazine? Now, if you have to find out your son is being known for something called sex criminals, Time magazine is the place to do it. But yeah, so there was then just kind of, that was it. We were off to the races. And I think you can see in that first 5 issues, it kind of wobbles where it becomes clear this is a story we're going to be able to write as long as we want. And it kind of pivots to an ongoing a little bit. But I think there's a wobble in that, back half of the first 5. And then we went until we were done, which is pretty great and pretty rare and spectacular.
You have a clear ending when you started this, though? Like,
I had no idea how I was going to get there, which is kind of how I work. My metaphor is always like, if we're going to take a road trip without a map or GPS, like let's say I'm in Oregon. Let's say we're going to drive to Charlotte, North Carolina. If we drive for a few hours and suddenly Mounties are asking us to see our papers, we've gone the wrong way, right? And in like 2 or 3 days, if we don't cross the Mississippi, we've gone the wrong way, right? So I have the kind of landmarks roughly, and all right, we'll get here. But I'm not entirely sure how it's going to go. And like it let us kind of grow, it lets you be organic and let it, we could kind of go down these little cul-de-sacs and grow and spend time with other ancillary characters and all that kind of stuff. But I sort of knew ultimately they weren't going to end up together. Like I knew emotionally where it was going to end. I knew that they're not going to end up together, and that that they would have a bad juvenile breakup and then they would have a mature adult breakup. And I knew that last bit. I knew how we were going to get there, but it was just like, oh, we'll figure it out. And then sort of built the stuff about the bank and Badal and all the kind of the unimportant, the plot stuff, which is kind of not really what the book was about. Knew roughly where that was going to go, and then it was just kind of seeing how to weave it all together.
Yeah, actually, I was saying one of my favorite things for I started reading it when it was coming out ages ago, but the first issue with the scene where they're at the party to save the library and John's quoting Lolita is like one of my favorite. That spread is like one of my favorite things in a comic, and it's such a strong start for a first issue, especially because you don't usually see romance like that in a comic either, and it's like such a standout thing. So you clearly, like you said, you knew that the real plot was about their relationship. So I was wondering, like, did you know that that's how it was going to start? Did you know it was going to be Lolita? Did you know, or like, did that come based off of you're like, I wanted to be about these people, and then it formed as it was going along, or the other contenders?
It started off from John's perspective, and in that way, it was very it's not quite autobiographical, but quasi autobiographical, right? It was sort of my experiences and all this kind of stuff. The first time I masturbated, I had no idea what had happened, like John, right? That was all very like, what is this? Like, I understood the mechanics of sex and knew what it was, but didn't understand how those words fit together in a sentence and that it ends with this exclamation point, right? Like, I lacked the context of that, right? So like that stuff, and like I got jumped on Halloween by a guy that threw eggs at me and my friends and then beat us up and they ran away. And one of my friends shouted, "What's your problem?" The guy said, "Eggs. Eggs is my problem." Punched him in the face. So like it was that kind of like anecdotal stuff, but I sort of wrote an issue from John's POV and sent it to Chip and was like, I don't think this is it. And I think that's fair. And I think these things are so much work. Like, nothing happens in a comic by accident. It might be ill-considered or unconsidered, but like, it's not like Game of Thrones where someone leaves a Starbucks coffee mug on the big table. You know what I mean? Nothing accidentally gets into a comic. Someone has to put all that shit there, right? And if you're not in love with it and you're working for free, like, it's just too much work. And so this John draft they sent, and like, I'm not really feeling this. I might be wrong. This might not be a thing. And Chip sort of agreed, and I was like, yeah, you're right. It's okay. It's fun, but it's just funny. You know, it's just kind of gross jokes. And I thought, well, let me try something. And then it sort of made Suze the main character, and then it clicked right away, and I knew 2 pages in, oh yeah, this is it. Got it. This is the book. And sent it to Chip when it was done, is with a note. This is like, I think I love her, and we have to protect her. Like, I think, and Chip immediately was right there with me. And I saw that Lolita thing happen at a party where there was a statuesque, gorgeous woman who was sort of sitting in a chair that was kind of in the middle of the party space. It wasn't her party, but she was very much like a queen, and everybody was, everyone was kind of seeking audiences with her. She was just this like radiantly gorgeous woman, and I watched all night as dudes like like smashed their spaceships under the force field around her. Like, all night long, guys would try to come at and pitch at her, and you're like, hey, and like she just knocked them out one after one, just decimating all these dudes trying to make time with her. And one guy was trying to like do the intellectual level. It was like a college party, right? Like, oh yeah, so what's your favorite book? And she said Lolita, and I was there with my best friend, who is a Juilliard trained actor, who for no good reason does a flawless James Mason impression. And he just heard someone say Lolita, and he did the opening litany in a Juilliard trained stage actor James Mason. Lolita, fire of my life, light of my loins, a trip down the tongue, the tap of the teeth on 3. Lolita. And this woman turned her head and looked at him, and like Suze, floated out of her chair, went over to my friend, abdicated her throne, and sat on his lap the rest of the night. And it was like, well, you got your money's worth from Juilliard, man. That's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Which kind of, the sort of, there was a lot of that in the book, either my stories or Chip's stories or stories about our friends, with sort of the serial numbers lightly fired. John and Suze were friends of mine. And it was a couple's name in my head, and that was where the name came from. And it caused some trouble. Susie's relationship. Apparently her fella did not like to know that she had a past. I don't know. It was like, I fucked up there, but just the name, that even though no reference to her other than one time this woman named Suzanne I knew dated a guy named John I knew. And anyway, so that was part of it. Like, then it was all about where can we put in our stories and observations, and then I'm sort of, yeah, like, just about every, there's a lot of stuff in the book that really happened to people that I know, or then would have read about and kind of zooped around a little bit. But yeah, I don't. I think the idea that, in my experience, men read Lolita and see it as a titillating novel of ruination, and women read Lolita and see it as a man destroying something beautiful because he could, and that it wasn't anything about like and the naughtiness of Lolita, but that they both understood something about the destruction, that it being about the destruction of something beautiful, and that that was the thing that brought John and Sue's together. Not like, oh, you've read a book with naughtiness in it, but oh, this is a book about ruination, right? This is a book about powerful adults destroying things. So yeah, but that and I knew that, like, I knew Chip and I were gonna be the creeps. That was always the thing. Like we never, the only people Chip and I laughed at were us. Right? It was like genuinely have affection, or at least some degree of empathy for like all of the characters, no matter how absurd or extreme or ridiculous. I knew there would be that sort of meta fictional, whether it was the kind of citing articles to back up like Robert Rainbow's speech, or then the sequence with Chip and I in it, like that stuff was there. It was all kind of there. Like, there's a thing, there's the library, it's in trouble. She's at a party, she meets a guy, they hook up, time stops. Oh my God, it's you, you're here. Like, that was all kind of there. And then it was just a matter of kind of dropping in the observed things. So it just felt more lived in. I had a friend who came home from school, skipping, to find his parents engaging in bondage sex, as is shown in the book. It was actually even rougher in real life, but I thought no one would believe me. And her abiding memory was later her dad coming to talk to her in a bathrobe and explaining, your mother and I are very healthy, and this is good. And I'm sorry that you walked in on it. That's disturbing, but understand that. And all she could focus on was he was wearing a dog collar under the bathrobe. That was real. That really happened.
One thing that I love about this book is that there's a lot of pages where there's just like some little detail or little joke in basically every square inch of the page. I was just curious if there's any of those that you remember that like stood out, or that is a particular favorite, or
Those are 99.9% all Chip. It's just what he does to keep himself from going crazy. And that would always become my favorite part of the issue, because I would get the art unlettered and I would get to see everything that would later get covered up. And he would put jokes in he knew was going to get covered up. I think my favorite was, I think this was the start of we had a running joke that this town, which we named Appletown, trying to appease our corporate overlords at Apple, that Appletown was rife with like David Bowie business ventures. And I think it might have started with like, there's 3 stores in a row, and the first one says fashion, turn to the left, and then 2 stores down is fashion, turn to the right, and in the middle is a store called Ooh Fashion. I think it might be entirely covered by words or very close to it, but it was just the funniest. That killed me. And then like we had an ongoing joke where there was like the diner where they meet repeatedly is continually getting different kind of post-punk band pun names. Like there's Fugazi, and at one point it becomes Amy Flan, and then it's Bread Leo and the Carb Assists, just dumb shit that we would do. And I would always go over the top whenever there were like, okay, they're in the porno store, so here's some of the posters, and we would, you know what I mean, like all that stuff. I just kind of throw things out to Chip as like a, take what you like, add your own, whatever kind of thing. That was because that feels like writing. It's not writing, but it really feels like writing. But it's not. But it's great. Yeah. But yeah, Chip just even made fun of it at one point where someone is going on a giant monologue, and I way specifically deliberately overwrote it. So these giant balloons, and it's actually knocking people out of frame, and it pushes a guy out of a window, and is the like. But yeah, no, the start of the David Bowie stuff amused me to no end. That like, oh, there's a retirement home, David Bowie's Golden Years retirement home. I don't know. This whole town was like a pilot program for David Bowie's commercial exploration.
The fashion one that Matt was just talking about is when they go to visit the destroyed library. Yeah, you can see in the background the fashion, and then the yes.
Yeah, and we in the small trades, in the 5-issue trades, we would run. I think they're in those. I think we run some of the pages without the balloons blocking it, so you can see. But like every menu, every newspaper, like Chip just filled. Sexual Gary is a perfect example of that. It's a poster on Suze's wall, and I was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "I don't know, like a non-threatening teen idol, I guess, And it's Suze's, and I was like, "Okay, no," and yeah, that's exactly who he is. And then like Sexual Gary becoming a kind of background character that we even did like a standalone spin-off issue that may or may not be his origin story. It's not collected though. It was only ever a comic. But my favorite part of that is at the end we have Sexual Gary's IMDb page, which is like 8 pages of sex movie jokes. Literally every one we could think of. It took like a year and a half for that instinct to turn off.
Yeah, the talking speculum will haunt my dreams for sure from the back of them. But I did really love Kieran Gillen's little cameo as the porn director on Liquid and Divine. That was really excellent. I love seeing Kieran in the background. That was great.
Yeah. And Jake. Yeah, no, and that was there was a real sense of Bonhomme at the time, like Sex Criminals and Saga and Wicked and Divine all kind of started at the same time, and we were all of us friends and friendly and had a great. Everybody like would just kind of roast each other, and it was lovely. It was lovely to be like in a wave of books that good. It was great.
This very much feels like a book that is like loaded with inside jokes and inside references and things, and you did such a good job, you and Chip, of making sometimes things that are like that can feel exclusive, like they exclude you, and I think you do a very good job of making people feel included on the joke. Like even if you're not fully in, it's like I want to laugh along with this. Like one that hit me is there's a scene where for no reason I can figure out, Suze is dressed as the Hamburglar while she's playing the narrator.
They're just experimenting, exploration. They're figuring it out. What are you into? I don't know. Let's try this. Let's try that. Because there's a practical, like, unfunny reason of like, this is like, we felt very protective of her as a character, and Chip shoots from photo models. There's a woman named Tiffany who's a very good friend of Chip's that is Suze, and there's a John, and he would photograph them, and there was always a thing about like, it's not, like, can we write a book that's this much about sex that is not titillating, right? That's not prurient. I don't think, everybody's going to have their own things or whatever, but there's no like scene in this book that is meant to arouse or stimulate in any kind of sexual way. like unless your kink is like committed relationships and open communication about sexual needs, right? But like there's nothing like for a book is dirty, like as explicit as this is, it's really not dirty, right? So if you're trying to talk about, oh, they're in the part of the relationship where they're exploring things, and let's try this and let's try that, maybe we like this, maybe we like that, like we're not going to show that in the book. So like a visual shorthand is like, oh yeah, okay, now they've got toys and she's the Hamburglar and whatever, like yeah.
Can you talk about like yours and Chip's kind of creative process on like how you would give like a scene, like, or that how you would want it to play out, and then he would come back with something different, or
Yeah, I can't talk enough about what Chip brought to the book, right? Like if it's any like it's just couldn't have been done by literally anyone else in the world, and I wouldn't have done it for anyone else in the world. If Chip didn't want to draw this, I wouldn't have written it, right? But it was the first time he had ever drawn something that he himself hadn't written. So I wrote in a grid because it was ostensibly funny. Like we were presenting it as funny. We knew that if you can talk about, there's a Billy Wilder line, if you're going to tell the truth, make them laugh or they'll kill you. So like we're going to put on the guise of, this is a funny book, this is a comedy, this is a sex comedy, right? And comedy is all about timing, right? So it was written in a really strict grid so I could control that on his behalf. It was all based on eighth grid, right? That there were 2 rectangles and 4 tiers, and everything would be variations of that, like that geometry. There'd be 16th panels, or there'd be a half. It was all just kind of these squares, and it creates a kind of 4/4 tempo, like you're listening to music. And then, although interesting, I don't know, pedantically enough, in the arc where they've broken up, the grid is gone. And that was at that point we had done like 20 issues together, so it was that there was definitely more confidence on both of our parts. But at that point, deliberately the grid is gone for the arc where John and Suze are broken up, and it works. Like it really, oh wow, something's different now. Like when I think it, even if you don't recognize that you recognize it, it's clear that something's changed, right? So I would plan it out and draw it, like I would draw the rectangles so I could like hear the tempo. I have a little kind of touch of synesthesia, and there's something about comics that I feel in my chest. And so I like working in grids and all that stuff. So I would kind of draw, all of my Sex Criminals notebooks are in storage because they're done. I would show you an example, but I would do like, would sit in a notebook and plan it out like that, and write the first line of whatever panel description I did would be 1/8 panel, 1/16 wide panel, whatever. And then hand it all over to Chip and have him do his thing. And then I would try to erase as many words as I could. Not always. That was my biggest failing, but it's a thing I've been working on. But it was just, and Chip asked for that. Like Chip wanted as full of a full script as I could write, because he was like, it's jokes, it's timing. Like I got to know exactly what you want. And we just found a common grammar, the 2 of us then.
Similar approach to other artists that you've worked with, or is it more like freeform, or does it really depend on the artist?
It depends on the book. The most formal thing I've ever done was a graphic novel series called November, which was based on a 12th grid, a 112 grid, and that was crazy making for both me and Elsa. Elsa Chartier did the art, and she and I promised we'll work together again, but there will be no grid. Sometimes I write a full script like that. Sometimes I write what are called plot scripts, and my plot scripts somehow end up being longer than my actual scripts because ostensibly there's like I listened to Joe Quesada and Brian Bendis bickering at one another at a convention once, and Joe loves like nothing more. Well, his family, the Mets, and winding Brian Bendis up are like Joe Quesada's 3 favorite things in life. And Joe was making a case, like only half joking, only half tongue in cheek, that like the thing that made Marvel superior to DC back in the day was they were such a more visually powerful experience than sort of Silver Age DC comics, right? And part of that was because Stan wrote when Marvel started, Stan was the only writer, right? So for at least for a little while, maybe he had one other writer, maybe he had like a cousin. I don't know, but like basically he was writing 6 comics a month, and he would write what we call plot style scripts, where instead of saying page 1, panel 1, page 1, panel 2, he'd be like page 1, it's early morning. The city's great. It's alive with people, and Spider-Man's swinging around thinking about how he's got to get medicine for Aunt May or else she's going to die. And when suddenly a car crash happens, page 2. And he would let the artist pace that out. If you can go online and see how Jack Kirby would write in the margins of his pages what was happening kind of in each panel. And there are different examples of Stan scripts online, and sometimes they were more complicated and sometimes they were more simple. But I listened to this argument, and Brian was steadfastly against it. And I was getting really nervous and frightened. And I realized, like, oh, that's always good. Like, that's what you should do as a creative person, I think, is like run to the thing that is frightening. So I started experimenting with writing plot style for artists that wanted to try it, right? I write it that way for Terry Dodson. But like, if there's a page of script and there's like 6 paragraphs on it, I'm thinking there's 6 panels. Like, it's not like secret code, right? But I even wrote Hawkeye like that for David Aja after having written Iron Fist for him full script. But, you know, my favorite page of Iron Fist, David wrote to me and Ed and said, like, look, I know where you want this page to start, and I know where you want this page to stop. Is it cool if I try something? And I was like, sure. And it's a page where it's like a drawing of a brownstone, and it starts with Iron Fist fighting guys across the top, dropping down the fire escape, dropping down the, you know, and then swinging off at the end. And I never would have written that. I don't know how to write that. I don't know how to think like that. Like, I'm never going to outwrite David Aja's hand and eye, right? So then when we get the chance to work on Hawkeye, it was like, this is how we're going to do it. You know, and there would be scenes of Hawkeye that I would write like a play, you know, or like, okay, the start of this page, they're as far apart as they can be. And at the end of this page, they're about to kiss. And here's what happens in the middle. And I just would write like a play. And then he'd thumbnail it and be like, you got too much shit, get rid of all this. Like, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it was, you know, David and I would basically only give up Hawkeye pages when they made us. We would keep fidgeting and reworking them. So I like to write for my artists how they would like to be written for, right? Like, I want collaborators, not employees. And I've been very lucky that only in a couple instances have I not known who I was writing for when I wrote something. And I've always liked who I was writing for. So I've always tried to approach it as a fan. Like, all right, as a Steve Lieber fan, what is the kind of ultimate Steve Lieber book I wish existed that I haven't seen? You know, and try to write. I write very differently for everybody. And what's the epistolary? Is that the word? Like a book that's like letters and newspapers or whatever? My scripts are very epistolary. Like, they're very much long letters to my collaborators. And like, we had an intern once, and I had him do word counts on scripts versus words that appeared on page, and 3/5 of what I write never get seen by anybody but the artist. And I think it's probably closer to 4/5 now, because I really try to, I want as few words on a given page as I can possibly accomplish. I want to write like a fucking samurai, you know. Like I would rather write the right 3 words. I'll spend a day looking for the right 3 words rather than 10 minutes writing a write enough 30 words, you know. But anyway, but I think it makes all the comics much more visually dynamic and powerful. Even something like Sex Criminals, which is ostensibly 2 people in a room wearing Hamburglar suits, poking each other's butts.
Did you? Oh, sorry.
You know, one of my favorite true life bit that's in there is a Chip story. That when he got divorced, he was walking around the streets of Toronto crying, and he realized it was upsetting people because he was a grown man crying. So he bought a ticket to a movie, just had no idea what it was, went into a movie theater and sat in the back row so he could cry alone in the dark, and realized it was Shrek and it was an audience full of children. And it was after a convention, we were both very loopy. We came up with this character Shrock that would be our non-legally actionable. And so, yeah, Shrock amused me to no end. And being able to put that in the book forced Chip to draw his divorce.
And the porn version of Shrock as well. That's also important.
So who's funnier, you or Chip?
Oh, Chip, 100% Chip. 10,000 times Chip. Chip also has the effortlessness of a Canadian. So he's very polite and very gentle and genteel in his presence.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, how about now? Can you hear me now? Hello? 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 I'm talking.
Okay. Sorry,
No?
I can't hear you for some reason. All of a sudden.
How about now?
Oh, yes. That's better.
That's better?
Yes.
Okay. That's weird. Okay. Oh, Chip is funnier, 100%, and Chip is genteel and Canadian and unassuming, and you don't expect him to do and say the things he does, and when he does and says them, it's so gently Canadian, it's not offensive somehow. Like, it's just Chip, 100% Chip, 100%.
Guess we'll have to see what Ryan North has to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, after the incident.
Ryan North is... Did you lose me again? Now I can't hear you.
You can't hear us at all?
Oh, now I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think there's some sort of echo cancellation that sometimes is too helpful and takes away the actual sound.
Okay. All right.
Let's see.
Ryan North is very tall. I don't know if you remember.
Ryan North at a con, and we thought he was standing, but it turned out he was sitting in the back. Oh, it was a kids Marvel
It was
thing.
the Marvel Rising.
It was the Marvel Rising panel because he was there because he was excited about Squirrel Girl, and we
Yeah.
were too.
Yeah, he was
and-
sitting behind us.
He was sitting behind us, and I was like, "Oh, that man is standing," but nope, he was sitting down. Just a giant.
Yeah.
What a guy. Let's see. Do other folks have questions?
We sort of joked about this earlier with the library tour, but just looking at all the books behind you, is there, like, what's like the coolest book that you can pick out of there? If there's one.
Well, these are only some of the books, but I have to pick a cool book off of here. Oh, this is I co-created and ran a show on Apple called Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, and this was a screen-used prop from the episode that I wrote, and our art department went through and made a whole book full of actual stuff just in case something might appear on screen. So that's pretty cool.
That's extremely cool. Can I ask what you're most proud of from this book, from Sex Criminals?
Most proud of.
Or most ashamed of, I guess.
Or most ashamed of. Um, Most ashamed of that it coexisted during some of the worst years of my life, and a couple of really hard patches, and I wish we had been more regular in our publication. But I mean, once we were out, but we would take these breaks, and the breaks got longer, and that I wish we would have been a little more regular and recurring. That I'm ashamed of. And then sort of at one point I was in parallel development on 2 different TV shows, and everybody I worked with suddenly was ready for script, and I didn't have it, and it's the first time in my career I'd ever been late, and I hated it. Oh, I hated it. I hated it so much. A couple of years ago, my New Year's resolution was to never feel like this again. You know, I don't know. Proud isn't. I don't know that is a thing I recognize. I feel a lot of gratitude. I'm amazed that it found an audience, and I was deeply touched and affected by the audience, and you know, Chip and I are incredibly close, and that we got to go through this experience together. It was great. Like, never would have believed it otherwise, you know. And just to have been on that kind of rocket ride with him, I'm incredibly grateful for. You know, we just put out a collection of the letter columns, which if you weren't reading the book issue to issue, I feel like it was a really important part of it somehow. Like, it, not just of like proof of concept, to like, look, we have readers, which is always gratifying and crazy, but like right away, like I said, we knew right away this was something, because right away people started to write in, and it wasn't just writing in like, hey, I read your new book, thank you, it was really cool, or whatever. It was like, you know, the first time I masturbated, like, people just immediately started to like open themselves up. You know, when I lost my parents, I thought like these, it was all fucking intense and heavy and real, and people telling stories about coming out or not coming out, or figuring out who they were and why. Like, people responded to the theme right off, and were incredibly open about it and funny about it, and shared with us. And that was like incredibly gratifying. And like, I didn't know until, like, I didn't really realize it until like we put the collection together, but I always did it at the very last minute, because I was always convinced every month this is going to be the month that the wheels come off. Like, I fucked something up, I blew it, we're going to alienate all of our readers, all of that goodwill is gone, everybody hates me, and I've hurt people somehow because I'm a dumbass. And I had such anxiety, I would like disassociate. I didn't remember writing the columns. And if you go through and you read them all in a collected book, you will see I repeat stories like 6 times, because I did not remember that I didn't remember month. I would announce things in the letter column, like, oh, we're doing a contest. Never do a contest, and never thought about it again. You know, it was just this, it was like I was in some kind of fugue state or something. And was always just so grateful and thrilled that people were still with us, that I just didn't want to blow it. Right. So I felt this tremendous responsibility to that. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah, it was just such a once in a lifetime kind of thing. And like it's way different than being a success at Marvel or whatever. you know, which is great and fun and cool. But like at the end of the day, you don't really own the company, you know. That this was a thing me and my friend made, and that it seemed like this incredibly idiosyncratic and personal, bizarre thing that, like I said, we didn't think would last 5 issues, and that it became a fucking phenomenon, for lack of a better word. It was like, I'm just very grateful. It was very intense and incredible.
You mentioned sort of how your mom found out about it. You have kiddos. Was this like a conversation with Kelly Sue? Like, when they're old enough, maybe we have a conversation about this. Or was it like, Dad, I Googled you today and turns out there's all these fun things under your name? Or was it just always a thing that was like up in the home library?
Not always a thing up in the home library, but our kids are part of our lives, and like they would be around it. Like the books would come in, or we'd go to conventions, you know. My kids were much more into Bitch Planet because they got to say the word bitch. And you would hear them put a little English on it. Like, hey, Mom, did you get a lot of work done today on Bitch Planet? Is that you knew they could get away with that swear. I don't think my kids have read much of my stuff. And they're aware of sex criminals, but also aware that, like, they're not ready for that. You know, and it's not a like I said, that it's not titillating. It's not like finding porn in the woods. It's not like sneaking a glimpse at, you know, grandpa's Playboy or whatever. So I just don't think they're aware of it. They know of it. I think they know what it's about, more or less. But I don't know. I don't push. You know, like, if you want your kids to not be into something, try to get them into it. So like I've not pushed or asked, you know. I know they've read Kel stuff, but I don't know. I don't know if they've read anything of mine.
Have they read Bitch Planet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Well,
I was gonna say even Tallulah.
well, especially.
Oh, all right.
But that was more recently. I believe with kind of the Kamala Harris campaign becoming a thing, and I think that was a sort of that, you know, like it was. I think very very recently she's read that, but I know they both read like Pretty Deadly, and Captain Marvel. But yeah, I don't push it, and I don't ask about it, you know. So, but every now and again they'll be like, "Oh, hey, I saw something on you, somebody on YouTube talking about you." Like, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you have any upcoming projects that you can share with us or chat about?
Terry and I are still doing Adventure Man. The third collection just came out. He's at work on a new issue. He's got 3 scripts sitting on his desk, so he's about halfway through the next one. It just gets bigger and better and more fun and more exciting. And I think after this next collection, we're gonna relaunch it as a book called Adventure Incorporated. That'll be sort of about the whole family getting in the business and it not just being, you know, Claire's story. So it'll be a chance to do like a new #1 and, you know, get people excited about it, but it kind of speaks to how the book has grown and is really an ensemble book. And there's something I'm working on that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but that'll happen at some point, I hope. And yeah, you know, when Monarch got the green light, I remember when Brian Bendis sold Powers, and he would work on that show. He would tell me about like sitting in the video village, the tent, wherever by the monitors, writing on his laptop, like writing Guardians of the Galaxy scripts while the show was filming. And when it was almost 5 years from the moment I sent Legendary the pitch, like not even the pitch for the show, but like let me take a swing at this, like into the air date was like almost exactly 5 years. So it was like a long fucking slog. And when it became clear, like it's happening, I had, at the start of the pandemic, I was wrapping everything up. I was at the first not even 6 months, first 3 months of the pandemic, everything I was writing was ending. But that was okay. Like I saw it coming, and then kind of, I didn't take on work and was sort of house dad, because Kel had stuff that was ongoing. And then when had started to kind of pick up some steam and get a new group of kind of create our own stuff up and moving, and then the show got greenlit, and I didn't want to miss it. I didn't want to be at Video Village writing on my laptop. I wanted to learn how to run a show, so I cut all of my collaborators loose. I was like, I don't know. And we're having gone through that phase where I was late, and like some people, it's fine. I can't help think, if I don't write, you don't draw. If you don't draw, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you don't eat. And I hated that feeling. So I was like, I don't know how busy this is going to be. I don't know how big this is going to be. It feels like it's going to be pretty big and eat up a lot of time. So I cut everybody loose. It's only been kind of since this summer that I've been back in a place where I'm like, I'm going to really put the pedal to the metal on some comic stuff again, here and there. And let me tell you, I showed up the first day on set in Vancouver, and there were 400 people working. I was like, oh shit, if I don't write, 400 people don't eat. That's really tough. Okay. So, I hope in 2025 to be more than just an occasional presence on the stands,
Have you had an opportunity to read any comics or graphic novels lately that you've enjoyed?
I loved the second. My favorite thing is Monsters, but that's, I suppose, a given. What else have I read? And no, I really haven't. I have an embarrassing backlog to get through. I read Michael Molcher's I Am the Law, which is kind of a parallel history of Judge Dredd in 2000 AD with the rise of the police state. It's an incredible piece of scholarship because it goes from Judge Dredd chasing down skateboarding hooligans and then Margaret Thatcher set fire to the apartments. So I kind of went back and read some Judge Dredd stuff and some like early 2000 AD stuff. I was going to try and do a Love and Rockets reread because I got the big box set for my birthday last year. This is like the first 50 issues as they were published. I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll reread those. And I started that. But no, I'm not. What have you guys read? Give me recommendations. What have you read? What's good? What am I missing?
Oh boy. So many good things.
I just read next month's, which is great, but...
Oh yeah, City of Madness.
Yeah, so next month we're doing Batman City of Madness, which, spoiler if you didn't know that. But anyway, so a lot of folks have been reading that because, Christian Ward's art alone is, can't pass up.
Also a super good story.
Yes.
In terms of just heroes or just like all art clubs.
Yeah. Well, graphic novels that you're reading and loving.
I just read back in August, I read for the first time Planetary by Warren Ellis. So when I was sick, I just like binged the whole thing and I was like, wow, this is really good. So I enjoyed it. But then other stuff too. We're also reading Beneath the Trees, Winter We Sees, which was like a really cool debut graphic novel. Which is, I really like that one.
Yeah, Patrick Horvath's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I don't know if you had a chance to pick it up. Yeah, that's
I can't
fantastic.
I can't think of anything
That's
other than Cosmonauts, which was the
Right,
greatest.
yeah. So some of our like all so we have 3 monthly graphic novel clubs. So we have this one which is heroes and villains, and then we also have a queer club and horror club. And so some of our like most popular of all time. If you haven't read Cosmonauts, it's a trilogy from Top Shelf. The first 2 books are out so far from Hannah Templar. It's absolutely outstanding. That's like Tallulah would absolutely love it. I'm very confident. It's about a quote ragtag group of space gays as they take down the patriarchy in like badass mech suits.
And the artwork is like the most beautiful. It's like so great.
Yeah, Hannah's exceptionally talented.
You have the thingy up there, but
I do have an art print from them. Yeah. The other one of our most popular ever was Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich.
yeah.
Which
I
was
would
like
love that.
Oh yeah, no, it's so good. So it's like 90% cheese puns, wrapped in, which is not enough cheese puns. Yeah. I also recommend eating grilled cheese while you read it. That also is excellent. But Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich from Little Brown Ink, right? I think it's the
Little
publisher. That.
Katie has it at Books with Pictures.
Oh yeah. Katie has it at Books with Pictures for sure. But yeah, those are I think 2 of the most popular we've ever done for any of our book clubs.
You guys did Catwoman.
Catwoman Lonely City was Cliff Chang's.
Cliff
That
Chang.
was I think probably one of the most popular we've ever done for this club for sure. Also just because Cliff Chang is cute as a button and just like the sweetest human. Yeah,
He's like Dylan
with the
McKelvey
G-
too. He's one of those guys that just decided, oh, I'm gonna draw comics like as an adult.
Yeah.
I think he used to be Axel Alonso's assistant at Marvel and decided he didn't want to be an editorial, he wanted to be an artist, and taught himself to draw as an adult ass man.
Yeah.
Just like taking up piano at a late age, you know?
Yeah, it's wild. He's so good. The G. Willow Wilson Poison Ivy run.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's been really fabulous.
Ivan Brandon did a 2-part graphic novel. I can't remember the name of it or his partner. See, it's all garbage up here. Fuck. Where did I put it? Did I actually put it away? He's self-publishing it through his company Death Ray. It's good. The Falling Stars, maybe, and it's sort of a spacey Julius Caesar.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I really like the Principles of Necromancy, which I don't know if it caught on for anyone else. That was
New from Magma Comics.
Kelly.
It's Jackson
Colin Lansing.
the other way.
Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing.
There we go.
They
Yeah,
like always do stuff together.
I
They're also really
love
cute.
that. Yeah, that was great.
What book was it?
It's called The Principles of Necromancy. It
Okay.
was one of the first out the gate from a new publisher from Magma Comics.
Yeah, from Joel.
It was 4 issues and it was like really concise, and I hope they do more with it. But it was gross and well
Sweet.
thought out and interesting, and I don't know. It was like a little bit more gory than I go for, but like very thoughtful at the same time.
I'll check it out. Kelly Sue and David Lopez have a book coming out called FML that is, I mean, look, I'm in the tank for you. You don't have to believe me. She's my wife. I get it. But like, it's really fucking great.
No, we ordered crazy big on FML. We're so excited, and we love Kelly Sue in general.
Yeah, me. And in the specific. And like it's like Sex Criminals, it is really hard to make comps. I don't know what to compare it to. Which is great for a comic. When you read anything and you're like, I don't know what this is like. Like, I love that. The most exciting thing lately has been I saw Megalopolis and I loved it. Loved it. I don't think I liked it.
It didn't sound like anyone did.
You know what? I don't think those people like movies. I walked out of the theater like, what else do people go to movies for? Why else do I go to movies if it's not for this? Like this idiosyncratic, um, experimental, bombastic, ambitious, crazy, huge, but intimately personal statement that is absolutely unlike. You can't. There's no comparison to anything. It's a little bit like this. It's not like anything you've ever seen before. And just like I don't know whether I'm just a sucker for big swings, but like I came out of that movie theater so excited. Like I said, I don't know that I like it. I'd have to go back and think about it. I would need to see it a couple more times because it's a lot. But like, I love it. I absolutely loved it, and it's defies every review I've read would be like, you might as well just write about box office. You know, like I don't know why people go to movies if it's not to see things like that, if it's not to have this encounter with something you've never seen before and don't understand. And like, it's a fucking mess. It is a fucking mess. But like, God, give me a million fucking messes before a single, like, easy, you know, Deadpool and Wolverine or whatever. You know what I mean? Which I liked. It was fun. I laughed my ass off. It was fine. But like, you've seen it. You know? Like, it's just, I don't know. That was the most exciting thing for me. Is was that?
Exciting messes like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh god, it's so good.
Very,
It's a big exciting mess.
yeah, I think Megalopolis is a big, exciting mess.
What's Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah. I mean, it's tonally different, but it's that same kind of like, oh fuck, two rocks are having a conversation. That's maybe the closest comp. Everything Everywhere All at Once, where oh no, now two rocks are going to have a conversation. Great, and it's the emotional climax of the film, and it's two rocks with googly eyes, stop motion turning at each other. Yeah, that's the closest. Yes. Now imagine a whole movie of that. Aubrey Plaza plays a character named Wow Platinum.
Perfect.
It's
Aubrey Plaza. Really.
like, if you don't love that, if that does not, if you're not immediate, if that is not worth your whatever price of tickets are in your general area, don't waste. Then it's not for you. It's not okay. It's not your thing. But if you can't see a poster of Aubrey Plaza that says Aubrey Plaza is Wow Platinum, and go like, fuck, take my money, take all of the cards, take them right now. I'm Wow Platinum.
I'm in.
Guy sold half his vineyard to make Wow Platinum. Come on.
Doesn't it make you wonder with somebody who's as famous and well known as him that he had to sell to like make enough money because nobody would fund it?
Yeah, but I don't know how. Nobody would fund it because Hollywood is full of cowards who exist to not get fired and who live to sand the edges off of things and appeal to the widest, broadest audience possible, right? It's sound economics. Anytime you work at a job where there are shareholders, that is sound economic policy, right? Take no risks, right? Bet on sure things only, bet modestly, right? And when it works, it works. Like that is, if you have a job with shareholders, 100% understand that's the job, right? The job is to not lose money for the shareholders. And that's what you do. And to do that, you make these things. There's nowhere, I don't even, like it's completely, also he wouldn't have been able to have made it like he wanted. I still think he didn't get to make it like he wanted because you can see some of where the money runs out of the effects. But no, I think it makes perfect sense that Hollywood wouldn't. No one would know how to do it. No one would distribute it. They didn't know what to do. Like it's not like we can't go to our shareholders and say we made this investment because it was like movie A, movie B, and movie C, which yielded profit X, profit Y, profit Z, meaning your shareholders went up 35% in Q4 last year, right? It is a singular thing. Like, yeah, no one would pay for that. Of course not. And I think he went through the pantomime of trying to pitch it and sell it so he could turn that into the movie Hollywood didn't want to make. I'm an iconoclast. I've always gone all in on all of my projects. I bet my house on Godfather. I bet my estate on Apocalypse Now. I've sold my vineyard to make Megalopolis. Like, I mean, that's like I think it was like, yeah, no shit, they didn't go for it, you know? Only A24 would have made Everything Everywhere All at Once. It would be like them saying, see the movie 20th Century Fox didn't want you to see. Yeah, no, that's not the business 20th Century Fox is in, right? Especially now, especially after the strike and the kind of contraction and all the craziness that's been going on. Like, Hollywood is the most risk averse they have been in decades. So yeah, no, Hollywood wants nothing to do with that. It's.
I may have to check it out then.
I guarantee you will not be bored. You might be enraged. You might be wildly entertained. You might MST3K it the whole time, or mock or laugh or ridicule. You will not be bored. You know? Yeah. Wow, platinum.
Wow, platinum. Yep, I'm in it.
It's just insane. It's insane. And there's stuff that's so glorious and brilliant and over the top and ingenious, and then there'll be something just dumber and rocks. And it's like it's all there. It's all wow.
Not Julius Caesar. What was the biopic that just got done? Napoleon. That was apparently just like off the walls, batshit. No.
No, I knew it was.
It was
coming
supposed to be a
out.
biopic,
Yeah.
but it like just got really fucking weird and crazy.
Sometimes weird and crazy is the way to do it. Nice. Speaking of weird and crazy, have you guys decided on your family Halloween costume this year? It brings a lot of joy to my small life.
I think I was hearing some Mabel Pine, some Gravity Falls talk earlier. I don't know if
Yes.
anything's been narrowed in on, but it's cool because Tulu has experienced things as Henry encountered them and was experiencing them, and now as she has caught up in age, she's like getting to go back and revisit them and sort of rediscovering them. So yeah, she's kind of on a Gravity. Last I heard, Gravity Falls. We'll see.
Are you gonna be Grunkle Stan?
It feels a little odd. I might want to go. Maybe like I could be Larry King's head.
That would also be really good.
I would want to go. I would want to go like deep, or I would love to be Imperfect Dipper copy.
Also good. When he gets stuck in the
Yeah, I don't know. I have to go back and watch the show and find a just a niche micro. I don't know, figure it out.
It's perfect. You could be Schmebulok and just barf rainbows the whole night.
I used to have a Schmebulok t-shirt.
Perfect. That makes me happy. Matt, do you have any questions for us? You don't have to, but if you do, we're happy to try to answer them.
No, I don't know. Is this worth your time? Did I miss anything? Is there? How can I help you? Really, what can I do to make your night easier?
Yes, this was definitely worth our time. Thank you so much for making time to chat with us. We love reading the books, but getting to talk to the creators, I think, always changes how we appreciate the works, and I think makes the experience that much more rich and allows us to, I think, feel more emotionally connected to works in a way that we hadn't always expected beforehand. So I deeply appreciate your time. I think that's especially true with a story that's such a yeah, you did. But I think that's especially true for a story like this that has so much of yourself and of Chip in it. And so getting to feel connected to that, I think, was really important to hear that reflected. So yes, I think it was definitely worth our time. I don't think I have any. I don't know how you can help us. I don't know. Other than we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
thank you for reading it. Take your time, like thinking about it and hanging out.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
I
Anytime.
mean,
I don't know that you.
it's never not impressive. It's never not amazing. I promise, like the day that the comp copies come and I get to see the book with my name on it stops being impressive. I'm going to get out of the business. The day that somebody comes of having read a thing that I've written doesn't make me feel like then I'm going to get out, and I feel it a lot. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. And like I said, everything that's good about the book is Chip. I was just lucky enough to be there.
I disagree.
Yeah. If we can ever convince you and Kelly Sue to come visit Baltimore, you always have a place to visit. Yes, a coffee shop and a comic shop.
I went to the convention once and just kept freaking everybody out by saying, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go wander around. I'm gonna go find out where they shot The Wire. I'll be back for my panel or whatever, and making people go like, which delight. I just did it again and again and again all weekend long, insisting that I was gonna go look for where they shot The Wire, and watching people almost physically restrain me.
Well, do we have the spot for you? Because a whole bunch of The Wire was filmed in this neighborhood, and the guy who wrote The Wire, Raphael, lives down the street, and he'd love to hang out with you. So any old time, you can come hang out.
Great, awesome.
Yep. It's true. It's great. You can, yeah. We live behind the shop. Everything's great.
We'll find some heroin.
Probably. You don't have to do it. We know where it is. Yeah.
Is
The place where they bought heroin's now an art gallery. Gentrification happened. Everything's fine.
let me hear your best Baltimore accents. Oh, now I can't hear anything. There you go. Now you're back.
Okay. That's what you said.
Oh, I asked if I could hear your best Baltimore accent.
One more time, Wes.
Yeah, from Baltimore, we gotta go down the ocean, huh? Or earn.
I got nothing. Nope. We did talk to Patton Oswalt a couple months ago. We did Minor Threats for book club, and he spent a lot of time here as a kid and has family here, and his Baltimore accent is better than anyone I've ever heard who actually lives in Baltimore. So, but yes.
I forgot. There's a series coming out of Minor Threats one shots, and me and Michael Allred are getting back together. Are doing. I think it's the first issue. I think maybe it comes out in November. Oh no, it can't come out in November. I don't know when it comes out. But me and Mike Allred have done a one shot that takes place in the Minor Threats universe, and it got wheels spinning between me and Patton and Jordan. So maybe maybe we'll get to do some more there. But it was a lot of fun, if anything else, just to write something for Mike again. It's about a guy who was born with Hawkman wings, but he's a human, so the wings are useless because he weighs 200 pounds and can't fly. So he just has these vestigial wings on his back. So he was an actor who played a superpowered cop with wings in the 80s and now makes his living going around the autograph circuit.
That's perfect. I love it. Yeah, we've been thoroughly enjoying Minor Threats and getting to talk with Patton and Jordan and the team. We kept trying to convince them that for Gail's Crab Louie book, that they need to come do the kickoff in Baltimore. We have a crab place right across the street.
Baltimore.
Patton, yeah, you gotta do it in Baltimore. Crab Louie clearly is meant to be here.
Crab Louie is one of the one shots in the series. I'm doing one. I think that's one. Jerry Duggan's doing one. Brian Bendis did one, which is really terrific, and I'm forgetting the fifth one. Well, we'll all be surprised one day.
We're looking forward to it.
Right
We've been
on.
loving it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Matt. We really deeply appreciate you making the time and diving back into Sex Criminals with us. And yeah, truly, you have a standing invitation to visit Baltimore
Great.
and Wire hotspots anytime.
I'd love to figure it out. All right, have a good night, everybody.